Street girl asks for a glass of milk at a bakery, and what the owner does surprises everyone. Margaret Wilson felt the weight of her 64 years as she arranged the bread in the display case of the bakery she had run for over 30 years in the Flatbush neighborhood on the south side of New York City. Her routine had become mechanical, serving the same customers every day, repeating the same empty conversations about the weather and the price of things. That's when a small girl with messy brown hair and clothes that had once been white timidly pushed open the bakery's glass door. "Excuse me, ma'am," the child said in a tiny voice. "Would you have a little glass of milk for me?" Margaret stopped what she was doing and looked at the girl. She must have been about 7 years old, her bare feet dirty with soil, her face thin but with big expressive eyes that seemed to carry more experience than any child should have. "How much do you have?" Margaret asked without much patience. "I don't have anything, ma'am, but I can sweep the sidewalk or clean something in return." The other customers in the bakery began to watch the scene. Mrs. Dorothy, who always bought French rolls in the morning, waited to see what Margaret would do. Mr. George, the retired man who had coffee there every morning, also stopped stirring his sugar to pay attention. Margaret stood silent for a few seconds, staring at the girl. Something in those eyes unsettled her, as if it awakened a memory she'd rather keep buried. "Sit at the table in the back," Margaret finally said, pointing to a small table in the corner of the bakery. The girl obeyed quickly, as if afraid Margaret might change her mind. Margaret took a glass and filled it with warm milk. She placed it on a tray along with a sugar bun left over from the day before. "Here," she said, setting the tray on the table. "Thank you, ma'am," the girl replied, and began to drink the milk slowly, as if she wanted it to last forever. Margaret returned to the counter, but couldn't stop glancing at the child out of the corner of her eye. There was something familiar about her, but she couldn't place it. "Wow, Margaret, you have such a kind heart," Mrs. Dorothy remarked. "There are still good people in this world." Margaret only gave a forced smile and went back to her work. When she finished the milk, the girl stood up and walked to the counter. "Thank you very much, Mrs. Wilson. May I know your name?" "How do you know my name?" "It's written there on the sign," the girl said, pointing to the plaque behind the counter that read Margaret's Bakery. "And what's your name?" Margaret asked. "Emily." A shiver ran down Margaret's spine. Emily. The name echoed in her mind like a whisper from a past she had spent decades trying to forget. "Emily what?" "Just Emily, ma'am. I don't have a last name." The girl gave a shy smile and left the bakery. Margaret stood frozen behind the counter, her heart beating faster than it should. Emily. Why did that name affect her so much? "She seems like a good girl," Mr. George commented, "not like many kids these days who have no manners." "Yeah," Margaret replied, but her mind was far away. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot, as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The rest of the day passed slowly for Margaret. She couldn't get the image of the girl out of her head. There was something in Emily's eyes that deeply troubled her. When night fell and she closed the bakery, Margaret went upstairs to the small apartment above. She walked to the bedroom closet and at the bottom of a drawer found a shoebox yellowed with age. Inside were old photos, some letters and other objects she hadn't looked at in years. Her hands trembled when she found a black and white photo of a little girl with brown hair and big eyes. On the back of the photo, written in careful handwriting, was the name Emily Wilson, 3 years old. Margaret let the photo fall to the floor and sat heavily on the bed. The memories began flooding back like an avalanche she couldn't control. Emily had been her baby sister, 20 years younger than her. When Margaret was 24 and already working at the bakery she'd inherited from her parents, her mother got pregnant again to the surprise of the whole family. Emily was born when Margaret was already settled in life. She adored her little sister, who felt more like a daughter than a sibling. But when Emily was just 5, tragedy struck and changed everything. Their parents were victims of a car accident on a rainy night. At 29, Margaret suddenly found herself responsible for a small child. She tried to care for Emily, but the burden was too great. Margaret had the bakery to run, bills to pay, and no idea how to raise a child. After 2 years of struggling alone, Margaret made the hardest decision of her life. She took Emily to an orphanage, promising to come back for her when she was in a better situation. But Margaret never returned. The years passed, and guilt consumed her. She tried to find information about Emily several times, but the orphanage had closed, and the records were lost. Margaret convinced herself that Emily had been adopted by a good family and was living happily somewhere. Now, 40 years later, a girl with the same name and similar eyes had appeared in her bakery. Margaret spent the entire night awake, staring at the photo of her little sister. Could that girl be related to Emily? Maybe a daughter or granddaughter? Margaret's heart raced at the thought. The next morning, Margaret arrived at the bakery earlier than usual. She quickly set everything up and waited. She didn't know if the girl would return, but she hoped she would. Around 9 o'clock, the bakery door opened again, and Emily walked in, even shyer than the day before. "Good morning, Mrs. Wilson." "Good morning, Emily. Would you like another glass of milk?" "If it's not too much trouble." Margaret poured the milk, but this time also placed a ham sandwich on the tray. Emily looked surprised. "I can't pay for this, ma'am." "You don't have to. Sit over there." As Emily ate, Margaret approached the table. "Emily, can I ask you something? Where are your parents?" The girl stopped chewing and looked down. "I don't have parents, ma'am. I live on the street." "How did you end up in this neighborhood?" "I was staying at a shelter downtown, but I ran away. I didn't like it there. Then I just walked until I got here." Margaret's chest tightened. Emily's story was painfully similar to what she imagined had happened to her sister. "Emily, did you ever meet your parents? Do you know anything about your family?" The girl shook her head. "The lady at the shelter said I was found as a baby. I never knew anything about my family." Margaret had to lean on the table to steady herself. The similarities were too strong to be a coincidence. "How old are you?" "7, ma'am." Margaret did the math quickly. If Emily really were her sister's granddaughter, the age made sense. Her sister would have been about 60 now, old enough to have a 7-year-old granddaughter. "Emily, would you like to help me here at the bakery today? I can give you food and a place to sleep in return." The girl's eyes lit up. "Really, ma'am? You'd let me?" "I would, but you have to do everything I say, okay?" "Yes, ma'am." Margaret showed Emily how to sweep the floor, wipe the tables, and organize the shelves. The girl was hard-working and helpful, and Margaret noticed how smart she was and how quickly she learned. During the day, customers commented on the girl's presence. "How adorable," said Mrs. Linda, a lady who always bought cornbread. "Is she your granddaughter, Margaret?" Margaret didn't know how to answer and just smiled. At the end of the day, Margaret took Emily to the apartment above the bakery. "You can sleep on the living room sofa," Margaret said. "Tomorrow we'll see if we can find something better." Emily looked around the simple but clean and tidy apartment. "It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen," she said. That night, Margaret barely slept again. She watched Emily sleeping on the sofa, covered with an old blanket. The girl looked so fragile and innocent that Margaret felt a maternal protectiveness she hadn't felt in decades. The next day, Margaret decided she needed to find out the truth about Emily. She knew the first thing to do was visit the neighborhood health center to see if she could get any information about the girl. "Emily, this morning we're going out. I need to take care of a few things." "Can I come with you, Mrs. Margaret?" "Of course you can. You won't leave my sight." At the health center, Margaret explained the situation to the social worker, Dr. Sarah. "Mrs. Wilson, it's very noble of you to want to help this child, but there are procedures that must be followed. We can't simply leave a minor under someone's care without the proper legal processes." "I understand, doctor, but in the meantime, can she stay with me? At least until you sort things out?" Dr. Sarah looked at Emily, who was sitting quietly in a chair. "Temporarily, yes, but we'll need to file a report and begin the necessary procedures. Are you related to the child?" Margaret hesitated. She wasn't sure, but she had a strong suspicion. "It's possible. I had a sister who was lost to the family when she was little. This girl might be related to her." "I see. Then we'll need some tests to confirm or rule out the relation. In the meantime, you can have temporary custody of the girl, but with our supervision." Margaret signed the necessary papers and left the health center with Emily. The girl seemed confused by all the grown-up talk. "Mrs. Margaret, will I get to stay with you?" "For now, yes, sweetheart. We'll see what happens." Back at the bakery, Margaret kept watching Emily. Every gesture, every expression, every mannerism reminded her of her little sister. It was as if time had turned back. That afternoon, while Emily helped arrange the bread, Margaret decided to show her the photo she had found. "Emily, come here for a second." The girl came closer, and Margaret showed her the black and white photo. "Do you know this girl?" Emily looked carefully at the picture. "She looks like me, doesn't she?" "She does. This girl's name was Emily too. She was my younger sister." "Your sister? Where is she now?" Margaret felt her eyes fill with tears. "I don't know, sweetheart. It's been a long time since I've seen her." Emily looked at the photo again and then at Margaret. "Do you think I could be her daughter?" "I think it's possible you might be her granddaughter." The girl fell silent for a few seconds, processing the information. "If I'm related to you, does that mean I have a family?" Margaret couldn't hold back her tears. "It does, sweetheart. It means you have a family." Emily ran into Margaret's arms, and the two hugged for a long time. Margaret felt an emotion she hadn't felt in years, as if a hole in her heart was finally being filled. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. In the following days, Margaret and Emily developed a routine. The girl helped at the bakery in the mornings, and in the afternoons Margaret taught her to read and write better. Emily was a very smart child and absorbed everything like a sponge. The bakery's customers grew accustomed to the girl's presence, and many already treated her as if she were truly Margaret's granddaughter. "What a well-mannered girl you have, Margaret," remarked George. "She'll go far in life." "Thank you, George. She really is special." But Margaret knew the situation wasn't official yet. She needed the test results to confirm their relation, and even then, the legal procedures could be complicated. A week later, Dr. Sarah called Margaret. "Mrs. Wilson, I need to speak with you. Can you come to the clinic?" Margaret's heart raced. She left Emily with Susan, her trusted employee, and went to the clinic. "Mrs. Wilson, I've received some results and information you need to know." Margaret braced herself for the worst. First, the tests confirmed there is a familial relationship between you and Emily. You share genetic material consistent with a great-aunt and great-niece connection. Margaret felt a mix of relief and emotion. "That's wonderful. So she really is my family." "Yes, but there's more. We managed to trace some information about Emily's family line. Your sister, who was named Emily Wilson, was indeed at the orphanage you mentioned. She left when she was 18. What happened to her after that? She had a difficult life. Married young, had a daughter, but the marriage didn't work out. Her daughter, who would be Emily's mother, also had struggles and ended up losing custody when Emily was still a baby." Margaret felt the weight of guilt once again. If she had gone back to find her sister, maybe none of this would have happened. "And my sister? Is she still alive?" Dr. Sarah hesitated before answering. "Mrs. Wilson, I'm sorry to say your sister passed away 5 years ago. She was never in a position to care for her granddaughter." Margaret began to cry. She had lost forever the chance to reconcile with her sister, but at the same time, she felt an even greater responsibility toward Emily. "What happens now? Can I keep Emily?" "Legally, you're the child's closest relative. With the tests confirming the relationship, we can begin the process for permanent custody. It won't be quick, but it's likely to work out." Margaret returned to the bakery with mixed feelings. She was happy to be able to keep Emily, but heartbroken over losing her sister forever. When she arrived, Emily was helping Susan serve customers. The girl had a smile on her face and seemed truly happy. "How did it go, Mrs. Wilson?" asked Susan. "It went well. I'll share the details later." That night, Margaret told Emily about the test results. "So it's true? I'm your great-niece?" "Yes, it's true, my dear." "And my great-grandmother? Is she still alive?" Margaret took a deep breath before answering. Unfortunately, no, Emily. She passed away a few years ago. Emily looked sad for a moment, but soon brightened again. At least now I know where I come from, and I have you. Yes, you do, my dear. Now you have a real family. The following months brought many changes. Margaret officially became Emily's guardian, and their lives were completely transformed. Margaret, who had spent decades alone, now had a reason to smile every day. Emily brought joy and life to the bakery and to the apartment that had once been so quiet. The girl enrolled in the local school and quickly made friends. She was a kind-hearted child and everyone loved her. Margaret felt proud whenever she saw Emily coming home from school, eager to share about her day. "Aunt Margaret, I got an A on my math test today." "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart." Margaret had discovered the joy of being almost like a grandmother. She bought new clothes for Emily, set up a room just for her in the apartment, and even enrolled her in ballet classes, something the girl had always dreamed of doing. The bakery changed too. Margaret created a special corner where Emily could do her homework after school. The customers loved seeing the girl there, and many even brought her sweets and little gifts. Mrs. Dorothy, who had always been a loyal customer, grew very fond of Emily. "Margaret, this girl has brought new life to you. You seem so much happier." "It's true, Dorothy. I didn't realize how much I missed having family. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Margaret had to learn how to handle the responsibilities of caring for a child. There were nights when Emily had nightmares about her time on the streets. There were moments when the girl tested her limits as any normal child would. One night Emily ran a high fever and Margaret stayed up the whole night, placing cool cloths on her forehead and worrying. It was the first time she'd dealt with something like this, and she felt lost. "Aunt Margaret, I'm scared," Emily said weakly. "Don't be afraid, sweetheart. I'm right here with you." In that moment, Margaret realized that being responsible for a child was so much more than she'd imagined. But she also knew she'd do anything to protect Emily. The next day, when the fever broke, the two had an important talk. "Emily, I want you to know you can count on me for anything. I know you've been through a lot in your life, but now you have a home and a family." "I know, Aunt Margaret. Sometimes I'm scared you'll get tired of me and send me away." Margaret's heart ached. "That will never happen, sweetheart. You're part of my family now. No matter what, I'll always be here for you." Emily hugged Margaret tightly. "I love you, Aunt Margaret." "I love you too, sweetheart." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. 6 months after Emily arrived at the bakery, Margaret got an unexpected call. It was from a woman who introduced herself as Barbara, a social worker from another neighborhood. "Mrs. Wilson, I have information about someone who may be connected to Emily, the girl under your care." A chill ran down Margaret's spine. What kind of information? A woman came forward looking for a child who might be her daughter. The description matches Emily. Margaret had to sit down. Could Emily's mother still be alive? "What do you mean?" "Emily's mother is alive. We're not sure. The woman who came in is named Jennifer, and she says she lost custody of her daughter years ago. She went through a rough patch, but is now trying to rebuild her life." Margaret's world crumbled. She'd grown used to the idea that Emily was hers now. The thought of losing the girl terrified her. "What does this mean for me and Emily?" "It means we need to investigate. If this woman is indeed Emily's mother, she has legal rights to the child." Margaret hung up, her hands shaking. How was she going to tell Emily? That afternoon, when Emily came home from school, Margaret was quiet and thoughtful. "Aunt Margaret, are you okay? You seem sad." Margaret didn't want to worry the girl, but she knew she couldn't hide the truth. "Emily, I need to tell you something. It's possible your real mother is still alive and looking for you." Emily stopped eating her snack and stared at Margaret with wide eyes. "My mother? But I thought that she was gone." "I thought so too. But a woman came forward saying she might be your mother. And if it really is her, would I have to leave?" Emily's question felt like a knife to Margaret's heart. I don't know, sweetheart. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Emily stayed quiet for a few minutes, processing the news. Aunt Margaret, if my mother shows up, will I still be able to visit you? Margaret fought back tears. Of course, my dear. You'll always be part of my family, no matter what. But inside, Margaret was terrified. She couldn't imagine her life without Emily now. The girl had given her existence a whole new meaning. 2 weeks later, Barbara called again. Mrs. Wilson, we've confirmed the woman who came forward is indeed Emily's mother. She wants to meet her daughter. Margaret felt the ground vanish beneath her feet. Meet her? Where has she been all this time? She struggled with addiction and lost custody when Emily was a baby. She spent years in recovery and has been clean for 2 years now. She wants her daughter back. Legally, does she have the right? Unfortunately, yes. If she can prove she's fit to care for the child, the court may grant her custody. Margaret hung up and cried harder than she had in years. She had found a family, a purpose, and now it was all at risk. When Emily came home from school, Margaret's eyes were red from crying. Aunt Margaret, were you crying? Was it about my mother? Margaret couldn't lie. Yes, sweetheart. I found out she wants to meet you. And that makes you sad. I'm happy you'll get to know your mother, but I'm sad because I'm afraid of losing you. Emily climbed onto Margaret's lap, even though she was too big for it. Aunt Margaret, no matter what happens, you'll always be my family. You saved me when I had no one. They held each other for a long time, both knowing difficult changes were coming. A few days later, Barbara arranged a meeting for Emily to meet Jennifer, her birth mother. Margaret spent the whole morning nervous, dressing Emily as nicely as possible. Remember what we talked about, sweetheart. Be polite to your mother, but don't be afraid. I'll be right there with you. I know, Aunt Margaret. I'll be good. The meeting was set at the health clinic with Barbara supervising. When Margaret and Emily arrived, a woman was already waiting in the room. She was about 35, with brown hair like Emily's, but she looked like she'd lived far beyond her years. Hi, Emily, Jennifer said, her voice trembling. I'm your mother. Emily hid behind Margaret, clearly nervous. You don't have to be afraid, sweetheart, Jennifer said. I just want to know you. The meeting was emotional and tense. Jennifer cried often, apologizing over and over for missing Emily's life. Emily was polite, but kept her distance. After an hour, Barbara ended the meeting. Let's take this slowly. We'll schedule another visit next week. On the way home, Emily was quiet. What did you think of your mother? Margaret asked. She seems nice, but I didn't feel anything special. Not like when I met you. Margaret felt a flicker of relief, but knew this was far from over. In the weeks that followed, the meetings between Emily and Jennifer continued. Gradually, Emily grew accustomed to her mother's presence, but made it clear she wanted to keep living with Margaret. Aunt Margaret is my family now, Emily told Jennifer during one of their visits. You may be my mother, but I want to stay with her. Jennifer was visibly hurt, but tried not to show it. I understand, Emily. I know I missed so much of your life, but I want the chance to be a real mother to you now. The situation was becoming increasingly complicated. Jennifer began pressing legally for custody of Emily, arguing she was fully capable of caring for her daughter. Margaret, in turn, hired a lawyer to defend her right to continue raising Emily. Mrs. Wilson, said the lawyer, Dr. Michael, this is a delicate situation. The law favors biological family, but we have some arguments in our favor. Emily has been settled with you for nearly a year. She's doing well in school and has a stable routine. But could I lose her? It's possible. We'll do everything we can to prevent that. Margaret barely slept at night, worried about the future. Emily was also affected by the situation, and her grades at school began to slip. Aunt Margaret, I don't want to leave, Emily said one night, crying. This is my home. I know, sweetheart. I'm doing everything I can to keep you here. The tension in the bakery was noticeable too. Customers could tell Margaret wasn't herself, more worried and sad. Margaret, are you all right? Asked Dorothy. You seem down. I'm going through some difficulties, Dorothy, but it'll all work out. 2 weeks before the court hearing that would decide Emily's custody, something unexpected happened. Jennifer showed up at the bakery alone. "Good afternoon. Are you Margaret?" "Yes, I am. You're Jennifer." "I am. Can we talk?" Margaret left Susan in charge of the bakery and took Jennifer up to the apartment. The two sat at the kitchen table, where Margaret and Emily had shared so many meals and conversations. "Mrs. Wilson, I came here because I need to be honest with you." Margaret waited silently. "I spent years preparing to get my daughter back. I went through treatment, got a job, rented a small apartment. I dreamed of the day I could hold my little girl again. And now?" Jennifer took a deep breath. "Now I see that Emily isn't the baby I lost anymore. She's a 7-year-old girl with a life, a routine, and love for someone else. And that someone is you." Margaret didn't know what to say. "I love my daughter," Jennifer continued, "but I see that forcing her to live with me would be selfish. She's happy here. She has a good life with you." "Jennifer, let me finish. I'm not giving up on being Emily's mother, but I want to be a mother who's present in her life, not one who destroys the stability she has." Margaret began to understand where Jennifer was going with this. "What are you proposing?" "I want to propose shared custody. Emily keeps living here with you, but I get regular visits. I want to be part of her life without taking her away from where she's happy." Margaret felt a mix of relief and admiration for Jennifer. It took real maturity to make a decision like that. "Are you sure about this?" "I am. Over these past months, I've seen how Emily talks about you. I've seen the love between you two. I can't compete with that. And I don't want to. I want to add to my daughter's life, not take away from it." The two women talked for hours, working out the details of the arrangement. Jennifer would visit Emily twice a week and have her for 1 weekend a month. It was a plan that would let Emily keep her stability while building a relationship with her birth mother. When Emily came home from school, Margaret and Jennifer were together in the kitchen, chatting amiably. "Hi, Mom Jennifer," said Emily, still a little shy. "Hi, Aunt Margaret." "Hello, sweetheart," they both replied at the same time, then laughed at the coincidence. "Emily, come here. We need to talk to you," said Margaret. The three of them sat at the table, and Jennifer explained her decision to Emily. "So I'll keep living here with Aunt Margaret?" Emily asked. "Yes, you will," Jennifer replied. "But I'll visit you often, and sometimes you'll sleep over at my place." "And other times I'll stay here?" "That's right." Emily thought for a few seconds. "Does that mean I have 2 moms now?" Margaret and Jennifer exchanged glances and smiled. "Yeah, maybe so," said Margaret. "That's so cool," Emily exclaimed. "My friend Sophia has 2 dads because her parents split up and remarried. Now I have 2 moms." The child's simplicity made the two women realize they were doing the right thing. At the court hearing, the judge was surprised by the shared custody arrangement the parties proposed. "It's rare to see a situation like this," the judge said. "Usually these cases are contentious. Are you sure this is what you want?" "Yes, Your Honor," Jennifer replied. "We want what's best for Emily." "And you, Mrs. Wilson?" "I agree too, Your Honor. Emily's happiness is what matters." The judge approved the agreement, and shared custody was made official. In the following months, the arrangement worked better than any of the three had imagined. Emily quickly adjusted to the routine of having 2 homes and 2 moms. Jennifer proved to be a positive presence in the girl's life, and Margaret discovered that sharing love didn't mean having less of it. "Aunt Margaret," Emily said one day, "I'm glad Mom Jennifer came into our lives." "Why's that, sweetheart?" "Because now I know where I came from, but I also know where I want to stay." Margaret smiled and hugged the girl. "And where do you want to stay?" "Here with you, always. But I also like spending time with Mom Jennifer. She's nice and makes really good pasta." Life at the bakery also changed with Jennifer's regular presence. She often helped Margaret on weekends and became almost like a daughter to the older woman. "Margaret," Jennifer said one day, "I want to thank you for how you welcomed me. I know it wasn't easy to share Emily with me." "Jennifer, at first I thought I'd lose Emily when you showed up, but now I see I've gained another daughter." The bakery's regulars grew accustomed to Jennifer, and many remarked on how beautiful it was to see a family coming together instead of falling apart. "It's rare to see something like this work out," said Mrs. Dorothy. "You're an example to so many people." A year after Emily and Jennifer first met, they decided to throw a small party at the bakery to celebrate their family anniversary. "Aunt Margaret," Emily said, "can I invite my classmates to the party?" "Of course, sweetheart." The party was simple, but full of joy. Emily beamed, surrounded by her two moms, her school friends, and the bakery regulars who had become part of her extended family. During the celebration, Margaret had a moment of reflection. She remembered the day Emily had first walked into the bakery, asking for a glass of milk. Back then, Margaret had been bitter and alone, living a life without much meaning. Now, 2 years later, she had a family, a purpose, and a joy she never thought possible at her age. "What are you thinking about?" Jennifer asked, coming closer. "I'm thinking about how life can change in an instant. 2 years ago, I was a lonely woman who lived only for work. Today, I have 2 daughters and a granddaughter." "You saved Emily, Margaret." "Actually, I think she's the one who saved me." The 2 women looked at Emily, who was playing with her friends, radiant with happiness. "You know what I find most beautiful about this whole story?" said Jennifer. "What?" "That Emily never had to choose between the 2 of us. She got to have both mothers and be happy with that." Margaret agreed. What could have been a situation of conflict and suffering had truly turned into a story of love and unity. That night, after the party ended and Jennifer left, Margaret and Emily stayed behind cleaning up the bakery. "Aunt Margaret, today was the best day of my life." "Why, sweetheart?" "Because I saw my whole family together. You, Mom Jennifer, my friends, even your George and Mrs. Dorothy are like grandparents to me." Margaret smiled. Emily was right. They had built a family that went far beyond blood ties. "Emily, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Aunt Margaret. Do you still remember when you lived on the streets?" Emily thought for a few seconds. "I do, but it feels like so long ago, like it was someone else's life." "And how do you feel when you remember?" "I feel grateful. If I hadn't gone through that, maybe I never would have found you." Margaret was moved by the girl's wisdom. "You're a very special girl, Emily." "You're special too, Aunt Margaret. You taught me that family isn't just who you're born with, it's who stays with you." That night, Margaret fell asleep with a heart full of gratitude. She had spent 40 years carrying the guilt of abandoning her sister. Now, caring for Emily's great-granddaughter, she felt she had found a way to make up for that past mistake. 2 years after the family celebration, Emily turned 9. She was in 4th grade and one of the top students in her class. She still lived mostly with Margaret but spent regular time with Jennifer. Jennifer had gotten a better job and now lived in a bigger apartment. She was dating a man named David, who treated Emily as if she were his own daughter. "Aunt Margaret," Emily said one day, "Mom Jennifer's David wants to take me to the zoo on Saturday. Can I go?" "Of course you can, sweetheart. He seems like a good man." "He is, and he really loves Mom Jennifer." Margaret was happy to see Jennifer had completely rebuilt her life. The woman who had shown up at the bakery 3 years ago, desperate to reclaim her daughter, was now stable and mature. At the bakery, things had changed too. Margaret had hired another employee so she could spend more time with Emily. She'd discovered that being a grandmother was far more rewarding than being a businesswoman. "Mrs. Wilson," Susan said one day, "you seem so much happier now." "I am, Susan. Emily brought new life into my world. And into the bakery too. Ever since she arrived, we have more customers, and everyone talks about the beautiful family you've made." It was true. Margaret and Emily's story had spread through the neighborhood, and many people came to the bakery not just to buy bread, but to meet the family that had formed in such a special way. One Sunday morning, Margaret was making breakfast when Emily walked into the kitchen still in her pajamas. "Good morning, Aunt Margaret." "Good morning, sweetheart. Sleep well?" "I did." "Aunt Margaret, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Were you ever a kid?" Margaret laughed at the question. "Of course I was, Emily. Everyone was a kid once." "What were you like when you were little?" "I was a lot like you. I loved helping in my parents' bakery and I loved school." "And great-great-aunt Emily? What was she like?" Margaret took a deep breath. She rarely spoke about her sister with Emily, but she felt it was important for the girl to know her history. Your great-great-aunt was a very joyful and loving girl. She loved to play, to sing, to make art. She looked so much like you. Do you miss her? I miss her very much, but when I look at you, it's like a part of her is still here with me. Emily moved closer and hugged Margaret. Aunt Margaret, do you think she'd be happy knowing we found each other? I'm sure she would, my dear. I'm sure she'd be very happy. That Sunday, Margaret decided to take Emily to visit the cemetery where her sister was buried. It was the first time Margaret had been there since the funeral. Aunt Margaret, is this where great-great-aunt Dorothy is? Yes, my dear. They stood in silence for a few minutes in front of the simple headstone that read only Emily Wilson, 1961-2019. Great-great-aunt Dorothy, the girl whispered. I'm your great-granddaughter. My name is Emily too. Aunt Margaret is taking really good care of me. Margaret began to cry, but they were tears of peace, not sadness. Dorothy, Margaret said, also speaking to the headstone, I'm so sorry I never came back for you. I hope you can forgive me. I'm taking care of your great-granddaughter as if she were my own. As they left the cemetery, Emily took Margaret's hand. Aunt Margaret, now I understand why you were so emotional when you first saw me at the bakery. Why's that, my dear? Because it was like great-great-aunt Dorothy sent me to find you. Margaret smiled. Maybe Emily was right. Maybe that meeting at the bakery hadn't just been a coincidence. 5 years had passed since that cold morning when Emily walked into the bakery asking for a glass of milk. The girl was now 12 and in 7th grade. Margaret, at 69, was more active and happy than ever. The bakery was thriving, and she had even expanded the business, opening a small pastry shop next door. Jennifer remained a constant presence in Emily's life. She had married David, and they were planning to have more children, which excited Emily at the thought of having siblings. Aunt Margaret, Emily said one day, if Mom Jennifer has more kids, they'll be my brothers and sisters, right? They will, my dear. And you'll be their grandma too? Margaret laughed. I suppose so, the family's just getting bigger. Margaret and Emily's story had inspired others in the neighborhood. The bakery had become a kind of refuge for people in need, and Margaret often offered temporary work and meals to those going through hard times. Mrs. Wilson, said an 18-year-old who had come to the bakery looking for work, I heard about you and Emily. My mom said you help people like me. What's your name, son? Jason, Mom. Jason, do you really want to work? I do, Mom. I need to help my family. Margaret hired Jason part-time and soon found he was a hard-working and honest young man. Emily was happy to have someone else young working at the bakery. Aunt Margaret, are you helping Jason like you helped me? I am, my dear. Sometimes people just need a chance. Like I did. Like you did. In December 2025, Margaret decided to throw a special party to celebrate 5 years since Emily had come to the bakery. She invited all the regular customers, Jennifer and David, the staff, and even some of the people she'd helped over the years. Aunt Margaret, can I give a speech at the party? Emily asked. Of course you can, my dear. On the day of the party, the bakery was packed. Margaret looked around, moved to see how many lives had been touched by her and Emily's story. When it was time for the speech, Emily climbed onto a chair so everyone could see her. Everyone, I just want to thank you all for being part of my family. 5 years ago, I was a girl with no home, no family, nothing. I walked into this bakery asking for a glass of milk and found so much more than that. The audience was silent, paying close attention. I found an aunt who taught me what unconditional love is. I found a mother who had the courage to admit her mistakes and fight to be better. I found a family that's not just by blood but by heart. Margaret was crying with emotion. Aunt Margaret always says I saved her, but the truth is, it was all of you who saved me. Every person who walked in here and was kind to me, every person who treated me like family, you helped me understand that the world can be good when people choose to be good. The audience began to applaud. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for letting me be part of your family. When Emily stepped down from the chair, Margaret hugged her tightly. I'm so proud of you, my dear. I'm proud to be your family, Aunt Margaret." The party went on late into the night with music, dancing, and so much joy. Margaret watched Emily playing with the other kids and marveled at how much the girl had grown, not just physically but emotionally. Jennifer walked over to Margaret. "Margaret, thank you for raising such a special daughter. Thank you for letting me be part of her life. You know Emily considers you her heart's mother, right? And I consider her my heart's daughter." The two women looked at Emily and smiled. That little girl had changed the lives of everyone around her simply by existing and by needing love. That night, after everyone had left, Margaret and Emily were alone in the bakery, tidying up. "Aunt Margaret, today was perfect. It really was, my dear. You know what I love most about our story?" "What?" "That it doesn't have an ending. Every day we keep writing our story together." Margaret smiled. Emily was right. Their story wasn't one with a beginning, middle, and end. It was a story that continued every day, with new chapters of love, companionship, and family. "Emily, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course, Aunt Margaret." "When you first walked in here 5 years ago, I was so sad and lonely. I thought my life had no meaning left. And now? Now I know that everything that happened in my life, even the mistakes I made, was necessary, so I could be here at the right time to meet you." "I think so too, Aunt Margaret. I think we were meant to find each other." The two finished cleaning the bakery and went upstairs to the apartment. Margaret tucked Emily into bed, as she had done every night for 5 years. "Good night, my dear." "Good night, Aunt Margaret. I love you." "I love you too, so much." Margaret turned off the light and went to her room. Before falling asleep, she looked out the window at the street where it all began. She remembered the cold morning when a little girl had changed her life forever. She thought of Dorothy and imagined how happy she would be to know her great-granddaughter was loved and cared for. She thought of all the people touched by their story. She thought of the example they were setting for others about how love can transform lives. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this touching story. Do you believe small gestures can change entire lives? Leave your honest comment, and if you liked it, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories.